YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel, Michael Romeo Talks Books. I'm Michael Romeo, and I do the talking about books. Today is an update on my great 20th century deep dive book club. And the purpose of this book club, which I started last month, is to revive interest in the books of the 20th century. Most especially the blockbuster novels, the plethora of amazing writers who just brought that century to life in fiction and in nonfiction. As I've said before, it was such a fast-moving century, things just happening so fast, technology upon technology, and just by the time you got something, it was already obsolete. And it was funny, I've said this in earlier videos, and in the book I am reading now for April in the book club, The Final Diagnosis, there is a character who reminisces about this, about in medicine, something new comes out, and by the time it gets out into the field, it's already obsolete because something else new has been invented. And that's just how the century went, and it was captured by 20th century authors that in a great way. Even those who wrote historical fiction found ways to just move that genre along the way everything else was moving along. And anyway, so in April, we've been reading Arthur Haley. I've been reading The Final Diagnosis, and I want to finish it hopefully in time to read Strong Medicine, which I think I might get to do. Somebody else has been reading Airport, has read Airport and loved it, and has said that they're moving his book Hotel higher up on their to-be-read list. Somebody else is going to be reading Detective. Somebody else is going to be reading Strong Medicine as well as me, if they have the time at the end of their other commitments. In May, however, I want to get you prepared for May, and I want you to have time to think about what you're going to read. May has the popular reading event Horror Mayhem, which is taking place, and I will leave a link down below to some videos introducing Horror Mayhem so you can see what it's about. It's mostly reading short fiction in the horror genre. Things under, I believe it's 280 pages, but like I said, I'll link below. And you can get the specifics probably more dependably than I can give them to you. But what we're going to do is we're going to parallel that. We're going to have a horror month with my book club. I got an alert popping up on my screen. It's annoying. There we go. It's gone. Okay, yes. Now I can continue. I don't know if that'll show in the video or not. I'll have to check. Yes, so in the month of May, in order to parallel Horror Mayhem, I'm doing a horror month in my book club of 20th century novels. And I'm starting out complying with Horror Mayhem's, short fiction theme. And I'm going to be reading the oh, and I just drew a blank on it. It's the October. It's by Ray Bradbury. Okay. The October Town, I think it's called. Wait a minute, I've got to find out for sure. I can't. I can't leave my viewers wondering what the heck it is I'm talking about. Let's go here. It's by Ray Bradbury. And Wi-Fi wants to be slow. Anyway, I just checked it out from the library, so maybe that'd be a quick way to find it, wouldn't it? Since I checked it out. Libby. There's Libby. Thank you for your patience. Oh, I thought I checked it out. What is this? The October Country. There it is. It is my current loan with the library. I took it out early to make sure I had it when May starts, because I have it for 21 days. And being a book of short stories, I should go through it pretty quick. But the October Country is supposed to be some of Bradbury's creepiest stories. And that's what I'm in the mood for this month for Horror Mayhem. I'm in the mood, not in the mood for violence and gore and all that stuff. I want to be creeped out. I want to be afraid of what's under the bed type thing. But for those of you who are not familiar with the 20th century, because you know, it dawned on me recently that somebody born in the year 2000 is now 23 years old. And I mean, you know, y'all are out of college, you're starting jobs. But come on, we're talking about the 20th century. You need to know about the 20th century. So those of you who are not familiar with the horror writers of the 20th century, let me give you a few suggestions, and I'm going to tell you my favorite books by them. A couple for each. First up, Robert Mccammon was a prolific horror writer. And my two favorite books by him are Swan Song and Usher's Passing. And I will be putting these pictures up as I do, so you can get an idea of what you're looking for. Jeffrey Konvitz wrote two books, The Sentinel and its sequel, The Guardian, both of which will scare the tar out of you. I didn't talk more about Swan. Let me go back to Swan Song and Usher's Passing. I didn't talk much about them. Swan Song is very similar to The Stand, and people put a lot of emphasis on The Stand, saying what a great book it is. I'll stack Swan Song up against The Stand anytime. They're very similar in theme and in execution, but Swan Song is so much better. The characters are better, the plotting is better, the tension's better, the scares are better. And in Usher's Passing, what he's done is he's pulled from Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. And that is a fascinating book, especially if you live where I live, in Western North Carolina, because even though he uses a fictional name for the town, it's so obvious that he has said it here in Western North Carolina, just from the things that he talks about. Okay, now we can go on to Jeffrey Konvitz. The Sentinel and the Guardian. Talk about urban paranoia. There was a rash of it in the late 60s, in the 70s. It was a great theme about the evil that lurks in urban places, and the Sentinel and the Guardian, the Sentinel especially. If that book doesn't raise the hair on the back of your head, then you're just too acclimated to horror then, because it's a scary story. Then we have Graham Masterton, who wrote The Manitou and the Djinn. Those were his first two books. They were two of my favorites back in the late 70s, I should say. In my early reading years, that really creeped me out. Just these beings taking over. And he does that well with the Manitou and with the Djinn. Just, everything is going along just fine, swimmingly in these people's lives, and all of a sudden, bing, there's something from another world that is turning their lives upside down. Joan Sampson wrote a book called The Auctioneer that I highly recommend. The Auctioneer is one of those creeping horror stories. It starts nibbling very, very slowly, and then by the time you realize that it's scaring the bahooch out of you, then it's too late. You got to finish the book. You're into it. Shirley Jackson, of course, wrote The Haunting of Hill House. I haven't read it myself, but I know tons of people who love it, and it is on my list to read after I do the Ray Bradbury. I'm looking forward to it too, because it's one that's been on my list for a long, long time. Ira Levin gave us Rosemary's Baby and the Stepford Wives, two wonderful books. Actually, I'm talking on reputation here for Rosemary's Baby, because that's another one that's on my reading list. I haven't read it yet, but I have read the Stepford Wives, and although it was a bit satirical and a bit tongue-in-cheek, it still scared the tar out of you. Thomas Tryon, one of my favorite horror writers, wrote one of my favorite horror books of all time called The Other. Twin boys, something evil going on. What is it that's happening when you find out at the twist toward the end? Ira Levin, who wrote Rosemary's Baby, had a blurb on one of the paperback versions that was published, where he said it was a book full of oh my god horror. And yep, he was right. The stuff that happens in it makes you go, oh my god. And then his other book, Harvest Home, it's a slow burn book, but it's still scary, and the ending is one of the most chilling endings I have ever encountered. When you realize what happens to this one character and what the rest of this one character's life is going to be, it's gut-wrenchingly horrifying. Okay? Stephen King started his career, the great Stephen King, started his career in the 1970s. More 20th century, right? And I'm recommending his first two books, Carrie and The Shining. Classics of the genre. I think their reputation goes before them. Even people who are young enough to not have experienced the 20th century or were born at the end of the 20th century are aware of Carrie and The Shining. Who else? That's all I wrote down, but man, there were so many other great horror novels. I mean, I'm reading Ray Bradbury's The October Country. He also wrote Something Wicked This Way Comes, which was a chiller. There's Burnt Offerings by Robert Mancuso, which is another urban paranoia tale. Well, actually, that was more like rural paranoia, because there was a rash of books at that era of people fleeing the city for the comfort of the countryside, whether to live for permanent arrangements or whether it was just for the summer. But they always got this great buy on a house or a great rental on a house, and you find out that there's a reason why it was such a great buy or such a great rental, because the place is haunted. There's just so much great horror fiction. The Day of the Triffids is another classic. Richard Matheson's The Hell House and I Am Legend, and Anne Rice with the Vampire Chronicles, which, although I'm throwing those out there, there's a part of me that doesn't really call them horror. They're more philosophical. They've got some horror in them, but they're not horror books in and of themselves. So I leave that to you to decide whether or not that counts as horror. But yeah, so join us in May for both Horror Mayhem and for Horror of the 20th Century, for the Great 20th Century Deep Dive Book Club. And if you're not familiar with my book club, I'll leave a Discord invite down below. It's very easy. You just click on the invite, bang, you're in Discord, and you're on my server. And you'll see where I have a section for the book club, and it's broken down by month. And we just have, as we read, we have discussion. It's typed discussion. Leaving messages for each other, and there are ways to if you want to talk about something that has a spoiler in it, there's a way to block it out, which I'll be glad to let you all know what that is. I'll probably put up a post in Discord sometime today, because I know some of the people that were reading Arthur Haley already know how to do it, but some people who are going to be new to Discord, you won't know how to do that. So I'll tell you, it's really easy. Alright, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just books. William Peter Blatty, The Exorcist. Maybe that's one to be afraid of. Yeah, reading horror is not a bad thing. Reading horror, I don't know, there's just something about a good, creepy scare. Just something that sends the chills up your spine. Another author, Peter Straub, who wrote books like Ghost Story and If You Could See Me Now and Shadowland. There are just so many, and you can, if you start looking, you can mine the 20th century for horror books that are just, I know, hundreds of them. There's got to be hundreds of them. The 60s, 70s, and 80s were just prolific with horror novels. And I hope you all will join us, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Also, check out the video below about Horror Mayhem. There are a couple of announcement videos. I'll link you to the several of them so you can get the different viewpoints of them. And let's have a scary May. I wonder why May. Why they didn't choose October. But anyway, that's not for me to judge or whatever. Just a curiosity. Horror Mayhem, Horror Month for the 20th Century Book Club. Get ready. If you have any questions, leave a message down below. If you have a favorite horror book from the 20th century that I haven't mentioned, let us know down below so people can start looking for it. Any other comments you have about this down below? I'll look forward to it. So that's it for now. That's the update. We're finishing up Arthur Haley in April, and we're going to horror in May. Let me know if you're interested in being a part of the book club and progressing with it. Let me know some of the authors or genres or topics that you'd like to see us focus in on. And I'm sure you'll have some good ideas. And we'll talk to you again soon. And have a great day. Keep reading. It's a great thing to do. Love y'all.